So, as you may know, whoever did VALTAN, whoever did not do VALTAN, you guys might have seen the first gate when you guys eat the marbles, right? Whereas you have to stagger afterwards, right? As you may know, when you guys do VALTAN Gate 1, at 30th line and then 15th line, you have the orbs. When you eat the orbs, you have to stagger, right? And it seems like not many of the players are kind of know how the stagger mechanic works. So I've seen the cheese build too, where one person drags all the orbs to the 12 o'clock position and then everyone else hides on the 6 o'clock. Well, I think what's important is people should know stagger from this point on, because later on there will be a lot more stagger mechanics. And if one person doesn't know how their stagger work and where they are in the stagger tier, it's going to be harder for people to figure things out. Well, obviously, this is considering not using battle items, because most of the gimmicks, you don't have to use battle items like whirlwind bombs. But the reason why you use it is because sometimes your stagger skills are on cooldown. So you gotta do less stagger, right? And if you fail to stagger, obviously you're going to wipe. And you guys have been wiped before for a long time. So what's important here is I'm going to make a stagger list for you, right? So why is this important? Is because when you do VALTAN, you have 8 people, right? You have 8 people standing doing the marbles, correct? And when you do the marbles, what happens is person with the higher stagger tends to be in a higher number. So for example, if you're a destroyer obviously does huge stagger, right? And as most people know, they tend to stand on number 1, the number 1 spot, right? So number 1 would be like a high stagger person, and number 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. should be based on the amount of stagger that you can do. Does that make sense? So if you're a bard without vital point, if you're a class that has very low stagger, they tend to be in the later numbers, because what they do is they circle around a little more and they have less time to do staggers, right? So basically, the higher the number, you're supposed to stand on the front side. Well, you don't really need to, but it helps just a little bit. Higher chance to succeed your stagger mechanic. Okay, let's start. It's Pinnacle. So Pinnacle Glavier, it's not bad because the blue skills has a lot of stagger. But I feel that Control has just a little more. So I'm figuring out where I'm gonna should have put. So I'm gonna put it on 5 for now, and then Control on 4, because Control is higher. Control is higher stagger than Pinnacle for sure. Even though they have this, even though they share the same skill. By the way, red skill almost has no stagger on them. You have to use your blue skills. Okay, so Berserker's technique. So Berserkers, they also have a really good stagger as well, right? I think there are about 3-4 as well, about the same as Control. And also Berserkers, thing I forgot to mention. This is the same for Mayhem as well. Berserker's Z skill does stagger, guys, and it does decent amount of stagger. So what you do is you use your skills that does the stagger, and then you finish it out the Z skill. That's what they mostly do, especially for Mayhem, because Mayhem's main DPS is not the Z skill. But Berserker's technique, since Z skill is one of the main DPS skill, you can kind of save it. But when you're Mayhem, you should save your Z skill for stagger mechanics, okay? Okay, so let's go to Esoteric. Esoteric should be right below Control. The Esoteric skills itself does have stagger, and it's not bad, but you have to use it accordingly. For example, you have to fill the bubbles to do the skills, right? So Esoteric Word Answer is not bad, okay? So let's put it this way. Paladin and Bard, if you do not have Vital Point, they're down here, okay? They're at the lowest stagger if you don't have Vital Point. However, if Bard has a Vital Point, it is up to here. It is actually really good. That's why some Bards do go for Vital Point. There's almost at like this level. And same thing for Paladin. It's right below Bard. And this is for 1 judgment or 2 judgments. Doesn't matter. It's always below Bard. The Igniter. Where do you think she is? She's actually pretty high. She's over here. And this is conditional, where you have to use all 3 of your main skills. Your Doomsday, your Punishing Strike, and your explosion and your other skills all need to be in there. And this is the reflux and ignition at the same time. They're the same. It's because when sorcerers can't do stagger, that means their skills are on cooldown. So that means they did something wrong. Because igniter tend to save those skills for DPS. So they're DPS Andes. So if stagger is wrong, if stagger fails and you see an ignition sorcerers in their team, they're trying to save that skill for DPS and not help the team with the mechanics. Okay? I'm saying that as a joke, but obviously igniter or reflux, the 3 main DPS skills does a lot of stagger. So Death Strike is over here. It's about the same. Death Strike. And there's the Loyal Companion. So Loyal Companion is a little bit lower than Death Strike. Their skill set's a little bit different. Death Strike, Sharpshooter, their burst stagger is really good. Robot Spirit is actually above over here. You need to, this is conditional, by the way. It's going to be lower, about lower here, but you need to turn on your hype mode at 3 stagger. It doesn't say you do additional stagger, but when you turn level 3 hype on, what happens? Your cooldown is so much faster, right? That's why you get to squeeze in a little 1 or 2 more skills in to do the additional stagger within the given amount of time, a short amount of time, right? So this is the same case for energy overflow as well. Now, first intention, same thing. It should be about here because you just cycle your skills about quickly. Deadeye, down here. And Gunslinger is exactly the same. They're in the lower section. They do lack a little bit of stagger. They do. And I guess Handgunner, I can put it here too. And the reason why is you can just look at the skills because most of the skills, there is no high stagger. There's no like mid-high stagger. So they tend to be a little bit lower on the stagger side. It's always been like that for every single raid. They tend to be in the lower section of the stagger. If you mess up, you have to throw a Whirlwind Bomb. And I always do. If you are a Gunslinger, if you are a Deadeye, if you think stagger is lacking, they need to help a little bit by throwing Whirlwind Bomb. So if you have like a full team of Gunslingers only, you might have a little bit of problem. Peacemaker, this is also conditional as well. This can go up a little bit if you go Last Request, right? Last Request does give you a lot of stagger, but not many Gunslingers have that. You gotta have it up to like level 10 and stuff. But if you put it up to level 10, your other skills are going to be much lower, right? So this doesn't make sense to do so, okay? A Surge Blade is actually down here because the problem is when you do the Surge Blade, most of the skills are stack gaining skills and they tend to be in the lower section. Taijutsu, where do you think it is? It's up here. Scrapper is actually really good on stagger because almost every single skill that she has stagger. So she's like another level above. That's what I think. That's why they usually happen to be in the front section instead of the back, okay? That's why scrappers are always in number 1 or 2 when you see like pubs in VALTAN. Now, also, we have Demonic Impulse. Where do you think Demonic Impulse is? I think Demonic Impulse is around here. And this is also conditional. If you don't transform, you're like down here, okay? So what's important? What is important for Shadowhunters to do? This is a mistake even I do, okay? Before the stagger mechanic, your transformation runs out, so you try to do stagger with human form. So if you transform, you're up here. If you don't transform, you're down here. So what do you do? Make sure you save your transformation mode before line 30 or line 15 on VALTAN, okay? But make sure you know, okay? So perfect suppression is up here too, okay? Because what perfect suppression does is the perfect suppression skills do stagger as well. So they're up here, but they're more consistent. They're just here. Okay? But Demonic Impulse, make sure to know that he's down here if you're not transformed, okay? That's very important, guys. This is very important. Whether you transform or not, it's a big difference. It's a big stagger difference. Barrage and Firepower Enhancement, they're the same. They are up here. They're up here. The reason why they're up here is because they have a synergy. Also, Taijutsu have a synergy too, but they don't really need to do it. But they have a Napalm. They have a skill called a Napalm, where if you use a Napalm, it gives everyone additional stagger. What does that mean? Let's say you are doing a VALTAN and then you eat the orb, right? 1 or 2, you eat the orb first, right? When you eat the orb, you add napalm. That means 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All these guys are going to do additional stagger. That means they have to be in the front. It doesn't make sense if they're in the back. Does that make sense? Since they have a stagger synergy built in, they're very important and they do a lot of stagger in general. So after the patch, air raid and homing barrage did get lowered. But the thing is, this is what you do. You air raid homing barrage anyways, right? Because they're fast in cooldown if you're a normal version. Well, if you're in the transformation version, it's a little bit different. So you put these two, and then you add napalm, and then you have multiple rocket launcher, and then you have other skills too. But the point is, the napalm shot itself and the multiple rocket launcher itself just gives it a whole package. Now, since the scrapper is also here, gun lancer, red gun lancer is also over here. Yeah, gun lancer is just good burst of stagger, and it's just good. It's just good. It's gun lancer. Gun lancer is Giga Chad. You really don't have anything else to say. Striker, unfortunately, is out about down here. But the problem is Striker needs to have the orbs, and if you're Deathblow, you can only use Lightning Tiger Kick. So there isn't really much to do. So they tend to be a little bit on the lower side, and they take a lot of whirlwind bombs too. So they're like about here. Okay. Remaining energy is a little bit up. Esoteric, same thing, but maybe a little bit above. I think a little bit above, but it's like it's so minuscule. So I can probably put it in the same section. Now we have one left. We have the blue gun lancer, and blue gun lancer out of this here is actually tier above everything else. Blue gun lancer is always number 1, unless you're like in a goofy like a homework party. If you're actually trying to do a progression, if you have a blue gun lancer, he's always number 1, always. On the orb section. Now we also have to add destroyer too, right? Okay. So we have destroyers, right? Hammer of Rage. Hammer of Rage is here. It's about the same as all these guys. But gravity training is up here. Let's go over an example. Okay? You have a gun lancer, you have, like a sorceress, you have like a gunslinger, you have like all these teams. The person that eats the orb, the higher it is, they should stand earlier positions. But nowadays it doesn't matter because, we're all like okay at the game, I guess. Like everyone's just homework, doesn't matter where they stand. They just don't care. Like Korean homework parties, they just don't care. Anyone can stand. But if there is a gun lancer, if there is a destroyer, if there's like a scrapper, if there's like a artillerist, they're always in 1, 2, or 3. They're always in 1, 2, or 3. I think this covers it. It's very quick. It's a very quick video, just going over one by one. And by the way, just because it's like this, you say, "Hey man, I'm this class. I gotta be in the earlier section. Like move over." Like don't be like that though. Okay. It's just a reference that if you happen to be lacking a little bit of stagger, it is important to just keep in reference that, hey, how come this gun lancer is staying at like 6, 7 position, right? Why don't you be on the front and see how it works, right? Or, you can always, anyways, also at the same time, throwing whirlwind bomb is also the case too. It's just that whenever you guys run VALTAN and have a little bit of stagger problem, which I've seen on some of the feedbacks about like, hey, like, I have this stagger problem, but we don't want to do like this cheese thing that they do where where you aggro all the orbs and all that stuff, or you don't want to use way, like you want to do like an actual mechanic that is intended to do and practice stagger with the current thing. Because later on when you guys do Viakis, when you guys do Cuckoo, and when you guys do Broshazo, like the raids in the future, there is going to be a tighter stagger checks. There are going to be infinitely more challenging stagger checks, right? And it is important for you to know how much stagger you actually do. And as for raid leaders too, it is important for raid leaders to balance out stagger as well. For example, in the future, there will be raids where they're going to split up into 4 groups. The big cube boss that you guys see that I do sometimes on my stream, they're divided into groups of 2, and they each need to stagger a cube. So what if this bard doesn't have any vital point, is grouped up with gunslinger? They have a much harder time destroying that cube. So you kind of want to balance out the stagger so that someone from this section can partner up with like a gunslinger so that they can stagger properly. But at the same time, most of the stagger gimmicks can be passed with whirlwind bombs, by the way. But without using the whirlwind bombs, you know, technically, if you don't want to, this is how you do it properly. And at the same time, if your skills are on cooldown, you have to use a whirlwind bomb. Do one or the other. You save your skill, or you use a whirlwind bomb. So basically, most of the time, people are just greedy to do DPS. Like, you know, you do that all the time. I do it all the time too. You're greedy to get DPS, and then all your skills are on cooldown, and the stagger mechanic comes in. And then you also refuse to throw a whirlwind bomb. That means you're useless to the party. You should not do that.